Hello everyone, and welcome to another Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Today we are going to discuss Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And I like to often put this, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who anyone else is on any given day. Because it's important to realize that in the grand scheme of things, though standards are important, and this is something that even Jordan Peterson talks about in this chapter, how we hold ourselves to standards is often skewed and frankly done improperly. Because all too often, because we have this idea of standards, we have this idea that we should be comparing ourselves to others rather than comparing ourselves to our standards, because often we use other people to figure out what those standards should be. So this is where this kind of gets messy for people. So in this idea that we should compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, not to who anyone else is today, this isn't about getting rid of standards. This isn't even about no longer letting other people inspire you. This is about, when holding yourself to any set of standards, making sure that in your mind you are looking, when you go to question whether or not you're upholding the standards that you want to be, going to look at that through looking at who you were yesterday, looking at who you are today, not looking at who anyone else is ever. Because this is something we do. We look at celebrities, we look at people who have what we want, and then we compare ourselves and where we are to who they are and where they are. And if there's one thing that I've learned, especially from coming online with my holistic practice in the last 2 years, it's that you cannot compare yourself to who anyone else is, was, what they're doing, because what can work for some might not work for others, and what works for others might not work for you, or what works for you might not work for others. And in general, with the exception of a handful of things, we can pretty much create any situation we want, as long as we're doing a couple of key things that are specific. All of the rest of the fine details can be our own and not have to be exactly someone else's to make any given thing work. So for instance, I noticed that a lot of people in the profession that I'm in got up really early, like really early in the morning in comparison to myself. And so that made me think that I had to get up really early. And though there are days where I've noticed that I feel better when I get up a little earlier than I was, that didn't mean that I had to get up as early as they did to make my business work online. This is an example. So, though it can be helpful for us to say, hey, what did you do to get yourself to where you are now? You have to take that back, take it into consideration, and then do what I call taking what you need and leaving the rest. And this is going to come through trial and error. And this is why so many people get so frustrated when someone sells them a surefire way to make anything happen in any given period of time, and then it doesn't work. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. It not working can happen for a variety of reasons. But in my experience, the number one reason why it doesn't work out for any given person is not because the system doesn't work, but because within the system, this person is trying to compare themselves to this person who's given them the system, rather than taking in the system and then taking what works and leaving the rest. Being willing to have this trial and error process. In general, especially females, we have this tendency when we're younger to have this in-group imitation that happens. And this can be to our benefit or to our detriment, depending on what the in-group is. And it happens a lot more for females than it does for males, but it happens in general. And so whoever ends up being on the pedestal at the time, celebrities, etc., that's who we are going to be imitating, because we imitate, as human beings in general, whoever we think is most successful, whatever that means. So because we have this inclination to do this, which isn't a problem in the grand scheme of things, because the only way we can learn and grow and expand is by seeking out options for us to imitate and then imitating them. That's not the problem. The problem is that we end up getting in this funky headspace of, it worked for them, why isn't it working for me? When honestly, it's just the mindset that you're approaching it from that's making it not work for you more often than not, because you're comparing yourselves to them rather than just taking the standards and then comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. Because if you were to do that, rather than compare yourself to them, what you come to find is that I've actually grown since yesterday. I've actually grown since 2 years ago. I've actually grown since 5 years ago. And then all of a sudden, when you start looking at it that way, you realize, wow, things are happening, things are working. But when you compare yourself to who these other people are and where they're at, it seems like nothing's happening, because you're comparing yourself to the end destination, or what you think the end destination is, rather than comparing yourself to who you were in the past. And until you achieve that end goal, which that's not when we ever really compare ourselves to anyone. We only ever compare ourselves to people when we're not there yet. We're always going to feel down about ourselves. And that's silly, because even if you're not at that desired end point, which in life in general, you are never going to be at the end point until you die. We're always going to know in our heart of hearts, deep in our soul, that there's always more for us. And that's a good thing. But it's when we let ourselves get down because we're not at this imaginary perfection, rather than lifting ourselves by recognizing how far we've come up to this point. This is how we create the mindset that makes or breaks us. So the next time you catch yourself comparing yourself to someone else, stop and ask yourself, is this good for me? Does this make me feel good? You might think it does for a moment, especially if you find yourself being able to compare yourself to someone you look up to and see a similarity. But even then, it's not the smartest, healthiest decision. And then ask yourself why. Why do I feel the need to compare myself to others? And have I, and this is my favorite, have I actually thought through the standards with which I am upholding myself to. Because most people find themselves, especially the ones that I work with, most people find themselves upholding themselves to standards they've been taking on from other people that they've never actually thought through. That they've never actually sat down and questioned whether or not these are even standards they should be upholding in their own lives. So if you're looking up to somebody and then comparing yourself to them, ask yourself, why do I feel like I need to do this at all? What standards is this coming from? And do these standards even apply to me? Do I need them to apply to me? Just like my example of having to get up earlier. I like to stay up a little later and get up a little later, rather than go to bed a little earlier and get up a little earlier. I don't have kids, so there's nothing wrong with that, and there's no reason why I can't have clients and get up at a preferred time for me. And I was literally doing that to myself, where I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't have clients right now because I don't get up at 6 a.m. That didn't make any sense. But we do this to ourselves. We do this to ourselves because we're searching for solutions to our problems. But more often than not, we end up finding these so-called solutions in comparing ourselves to others, when in fact, what we should be doing is coming up with solutions based on who we are, not who other people are. Just because they are achieving what we want to achieve from an outside perspective. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me for another video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. That includes one-on-one. I do have spots available for working with me one-on-one if you're ready to heal, grow, and expand your consciousness to end the cycles of suffering in your life. I would love to have you. I also have Patreon, which includes a membership tier that has got all of the Patreon content from the Ascending and Awakening tier, as well as working with me one-on-one once a month. And that also includes Voxer direct messaging. All of my one-on-one clients, whether that be through my session packages or through Patreon, get access to messaging me in between sessions for any questions you might have in between sessions. What else? dōTERRA. I have my link for dōTERRA and dōTERRA Witches. In there, we have a full moon gathering coming up on Zoom through dōTERRA Witches, where we get together for the full moon and do a little ritual. dōTERRA, of course, as you might have heard me say, if you've been watching my videos for a little while, is your one-stop shop for replacing all of the synthetic chemical products in your home and replacing them with the best, purest plant-based products and plant medicine, and that actually work. I love to add that in there because, like I've said before, if you're like me and you've tried to replace products in your home with natural or organic products, often they end up not working as well or they taste like crap. dōTERRA is truly the best. I wouldn't say it if I didn't actually know it to be true. This is a quantifiable fact, not just an opinion. Last but not least, other links in the description. If you're enjoying my content here, if you're enjoying my videos here, then I definitely recommend you check out all the links in the description because I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy them all. And as always, may the energies you serve you well, and let's keep making our way through.